Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, Reagan Reese, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, is here at 3:30. We'll talk about the latest in the wake of that crash between a helicopter and a commercial jet outside of Reagan National Airport. What we've now learned about all the warnings the federal government's been receiving for years. Reagan with the exclusive on that. Andy Ogles, the congressman, will be with us today at 4:30. We'll talk about Washington, D.C., and President Trump's efforts to get it back under control, end all of that crime and that homelessness. And then Mark Spooner out of Fairfax County is here at 5:30 ahead of a big Fairfax County schools meeting tomorrow. A lot to discuss. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. At this point, it feels like the left is so thoroughly defeated that they've resorted to, I don't know, like fantasizing about Trump or something. They can't even stop themselves. They're going crazy. They're going really crazy. There's a congresswoman by the name of Maxine Dexter, Democrat, who was a part of a rally today, and she said, normally I don't curse, but I just need to get this one out, she says, and this is the sentence she came up with.
I've been told I have 30 seconds, so I am going to tell you that we do have to, I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump.
What? Why are they cheering?
Children that I just did that.
I don't think the message she just sent was the one that she was intending to send. You can tell she doesn't curse. She doesn't even know how to. How do I use this word in a sentence? Congresswoman, do you know what you just said? Yeah, they're going nuts, and they're falling for everything at this point. We can play these guys like a fiddle. All you have to do is come out and say, and just name yourself something ridiculous, and CNN will intone that you are a bad person. How dare you? And then they'll repeat the ridiculous name you've come up with yourself for yourself with. It's like this is like a Homer Simpson joke played out in real life.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We
Bart Simpson specifically.
begin tonight with Musk and Big Balls.
Big balls.
Big balls.
Big Balls, who worked for Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, Doge.
In the one case of the Big Balls kid, a literal teenager.
Big Balls online, Big Balls here that Katie's talking about.
A 19-year-old that goes by the username Big Balls.
So that would be one way that we could refer to him.
Young computer whizzes, the aforementioned Big Balls.
Because who among us doesn't feel better about big balls in charge of American air
By the way, that's the most she's ever used that expression.
traffic control?
And so, again, they'll fall for anything. For anything. In fact, Elon Musk has now changed his username on X, and it has elicited exactly the reaction that he was searching for. Here's Dana Bash at CNN.
Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge.
I mean, honestly, like at this point, Elon should just change his name to something trolly every day just to get CNN to say it, don't you think? So tomorrow it should be CNN sucks, and see what Dana Bash does with it. Just he goes, and Elon, who is, he's changed his name to CNN sucks. Will they keep falling for it? There's a part of me that thinks that they do this because they know that they'll fetch some earned media. Like, they're so desperate for anybody to talk about them, they say, well, if we say this on the air, maybe radio shows like Vince's will pull a clip and play it, and that'll get us some of that attention we're so craving. Well, maybe. Mission accomplished. As these guys go absolutely crazy. They're not alone in going crazy. There's a report out of Axios today that Democrats in Washington, D.C. Are so overtaken by their Trump derangement syndrome that they are all rushing to see their shrinks to report all of this. Axios' piece this week is Trump's shock and awe tests Americans' response to chaos. That's right. Never mind the fact that President Trump was brought in to stop the chaos. That would be the proper framing on a story like this. Too much chaos. We need stability. We need order restored. That's what Trump's trying to do. But the way the left and their media allies portray all of this, it's Trump who's introducing chaos. And they quote a shrink from Georgetown University, a psychology professor there, Andrea Bonnier, who says, there is an element of chaos right now, she says. She sees patients in the D.C. area. She said, quote, a sense of not knowing what's coming and not being able to control what's coming is really hard on the stress response. As humans, we don't love uncertainty. It's something that we don't tend to tolerate well. And then when we're anxious, it's excruciating, she told Axios. Bonnier says that she's seen an uptick in patients, particularly Democrats, expressing a sense of burnout, guilt, despair at losing an old way of life. An old way of life. What old way of life could they be talking about? How does President Trump's arrival deprive them of their, quote, old way of life? Unless they were planning the drag shows at the Kennedy Center, or they were part of the transgender comic book operations in Peru, or they were a USAID recipient, the majority of whom were right here in the Washington, D.C. area, not doing anything to advance any humanitarian cause, but instead robbing the American taxpayer blind. What old way of life could they be referring to? Oh, I liked it so much better when it was all left-wing chaos. There's a fine line. She continues, there's a fine line between burying your head in the sand and trying to protect yourself. I've been working with a lot of folks trying to find that line, she says. So a lot of Democrats going crazy right now. How are the federal offices at this moment? I do want to know, if especially if you can be our eyes on the ground in some of these federal offices, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What has been the emotional reaction inside of these federal offices as President Trump says, look, everybody's got to go back to work. You got to use the buildings. We've got all this empty space. We have a lot of federal employees. We need to pare down the federal government. He wants to actually get people to leave just by attrition, so the people don't want to come in anymore. That's an invitation to find another career path. But what is it like in the offices right now? I've been hearing reports that there's literally people crying inside of the offices in the federal government. Crying, brought to tears that they have to commute in, go to work, be inside the office. Are you seeing any of this? What's happening? Shrinks are very busy in Washington, D.C., as you just heard, as lots of Democrats are really upset by what's going on. You also wonder to what extent Democrats will finally pick up and move. Will they be so defeated that they'll just pick up and leave? If they feel like the gravy train is over and that Trump is just too successful? Will they leave? What will that do for property values? Might it make it more affordable for people to buy a house in the Washington, D.C. area? The left keeps talking about trying to do that. They can certainly help. Move. Get out of here. Get away from the nation's capital. Yeah. So we've got a lot of chaos going on there. But, the world is healing. The world is healing right now. You see Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth posting to social media this morning video and images of him doing some PT overseas. He's visiting with the troops. And he's running around, and they're just, they're out for a jog. They're doing great. He was doing deadlifts this morning with the troops. He was out running with the troops. Everybody looks like they're having a fantastic time. They're up early before the sun's up. It's a different world. It's very cool to see. Pete Hegseth was asked about this by Breitbart, and he said he loves it. He loves working out with the troops. It was a great experience, and he feels kinship with them.
You made a point to do PT with 10th group this morning on very little sleep. Why was it so important for you to do this? And tell us about the workout.
I did do PT with the troops this morning. Listen, it's not that long ago that I was right there with them. I probably, no offense, General, I probably connect more with those guys than I do with four-star generals. But now I get the chance of working with four stars and others who are committed to the troops. But when I can get down, do push-ups and deadlifts with the troops, and just hear from them, what's working, what isn't, how do you see your mission set? I love that.
I love that. I do too. And Pete Hegseth's busy. We'll see if we can't get into more of the details coming up, but you saw that he signed a memorandum restoring Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Fort Bragg is back. They had to go with a different Bragg for the person they named it after, and it wasn't because the administration's trying to have it both ways or something. So what they did was, instead of Confederate General Braxton Bragg, who the base was originally named after, they went with a World War II Battle of the Bulge hero and a Silver Star recipient, Private First Class Roland Bragg. Same exact last name spelling, Roland Bragg. And the reason they had to do that is because Congress had passed a law in these past few years that declared that these Confederate names need to be stripped. In other words, it's the law that it can't go back to Braxton Bragg. But what the Trump administration has figured out is they can restore the name creatively, which is what they did. So they brought the name back, and instead it's going to be Private First Class Roland Bragg. So it's Fort Bragg again. And the reason this is so important is not just to honor any particular Bragg in American history. The reason it's more important is because of the Americans who have made history on that base. That's the whole point of this. How many veterans came and went through Fort Bragg who identify it not based on its namesake, but instead based on the experience they had there with their fellow soldier? That's the point. That's the point. And Pete Hegseth, being a veteran himself, a soldier himself, he's in a great position to know that. And so he's restoring that name to honor the Americans who have served on that base, so that when they talk again amongst themselves about their time on Fort Bragg, they're talking about a real place that really has its name restored now. This is to honor the men and women who served there. And so creative way to get back to it, as Pete Hegseth announces they've renamed Fort Bragg. I imagine more renamings are on the way. But the Trump administration, very, very, very busy. All right, let's see. I've got people calling in now about what's happening inside of these federal offices. Kind of fascinated now. This is day 2. We got all this snow, so this may be disrupting things a little bit. Let's see. I've got Al calling in from Bowie now, line 1. Hello, Al. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Been a long time, man. Love to hear from you again. My wife
likewise.
Is working for the federal government, and she is absolutely giddy, as are her co-workers. I took her down there because they changed the building she was in, and we met everybody. They were all, glad-handing and saying, "Isn't this wonderful?" I didn't see anybody saying, "I can't believe I have to come back to the office." I think we're thinking about the place getting revitalized.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good story. So you have people in your wife's office, people are enthused to be back working with one another in the same place.
Yep. Enjoying getting their nice clothes on and getting back to the office. Yep.
Yeah. And look, that's going to be good for, this is all good for D.C. too. This is, the restaurants and all the struggling places.
Vince, sorry to interrupt, but if we can get a home rule revoked and get that place under law and order again, it's going to be fantastic. I
agree with you. We're going to talk coming up with Congressman Andy Ogles about this very thing. He's got all sorts of plans here, and President Trump does too. I think you and I are going to be very happy in the days ahead, Al, as they try and tackle D.C. I really hope so. Anyway, thank you, Al.
Thank you.
All right, let's more in a moment. Some more calls coming in on what's going on inside of these federal offices. I'm fascinated by what's going on. And how people are reacting to having to be back at work, or what they're seeing from their coworkers right now, especially the lefties who are very resentful that Donald Trump said, yeah, go back to work.
There it is. Pursuant to the authority of the Secretary of Defense, Title 10, United States Code, Section 113, I direct the Army to change the name of Fort Liberty, North Carolina to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's right. Bragg is back.
Now named after then 21-year-old paratrooper Roland Bragg, who served in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. Here on the phone, reacting to this, Adam in Silver Spring, line 1. Adam, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi. I was just so happy to hear that the name of Fort Bragg came back, because in 1966, after graduating from high school, I was drafted into the Army. And Fort Bragg was the first place I went. And at that time, I left childhood and went to manhood. All of a sudden, I met a lot of friends who went with me. One of my friends, his name was Jones. I never knew what happened to him because unfortunately, I didn't take down people's names and addresses and phone numbers, but he was my best friend at Fort Bragg. And I mean, we did a lot of things together. And so I'm just so happy to hear that name, because when I tell anybody about me going to the military, I always think about Fort Bragg. I don't know what the other name they put on it, but it's always been Fort Bragg to me, because that's where I first started my military service, and I did 26 years in the military after going to Fort Bragg. So I just thank you for letting me know that it's back.
It's back. It's back. And it's back to honor the history that you made there. That's the point. That's why the name is back. And so it sounds like you are, I can tell, very pleased to hear the Secretary of Defense Hegseth has restored that history that you were a part of, Adam.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so very much. I thank him for doing that, because I didn't like it when they changed the name.
Yeah.
But thank you for letting me know.
You got it, Adam. Thank you for your service, sir. All right. An amazing administration. Look at that. You know, what that tells me, that phone call, is that Secretary of Defense Hegseth, President Trump, this is not nonsense. This is not like a sideshow. They're tapping into things Americans really, really want. And we should care a lot about the guys who have given so much to serve our country. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. Coming up, Reagan Reese will join us, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. How did a helicopter and a plane collide over the Potomac? And how much did the federal government know in advance that could have prevented this? Reagan with an update on that story. Good afternoon. 3:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Andy Ogles was with us at 4:30. We're going to talk about getting control of an out-of-control Washington, D.C., getting the homeless off the streets. How about that? Wouldn't that be good? And then Mark Spooner is here at 5:30. We talk about Fairfax County with him. There's a big meeting tomorrow to discuss sex education and children in third grade. What? Mark Spooner joins us with the details ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. How did we get that accident in the Potomac? A devastating crash, so many lives lost, as a helicopter, a military helicopter and a commercial airliner collide over the Potomac River. And, a lot of questions have come out of that, including, like, first of all, how could something like this happen? And were there any indications in the first place that something like this could happen? And the answer to that, quite unfortunately, is yes. Joining us with more details on this, Reagan Reese, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, with an important new report that she co-authored with the fabulous Amber Duke. Reagan, good to have you back with us.
Hey, Vince, thanks for having me.
Tell me about your effort to find out what the federal government has known about the interactions between helicopters and commercial airliners near Reagan National.
Yeah, so this all kind of originated actually with a commercial airline pilot reaching out and giving us this tip that there have been near misses going on for years at Washington Reagan, specifically between aircrafts and also just aircrafts and helicopters. And we were able to go through some public records on the FAA website, which this pilot kind of told us are designed so that it's a bit hard for the public to access records like those that we went through. And the records that we went through are self-reported incidents from pilots, air traffic control, et cetera, who are reporting any situations that make them uncomfortable or incidents that happened on the job that include these near misses. And so this pilot was able to walk us through how to click the right buttons and right boxes to pull up these reports, which then led to us finding that from 1988 till 2025, of these public reports, I have a feeling that privately there are many, many more. There have been 220 airborne incidences, including near misses between aircraft. Of those, there have been 30 that have been near misses between planes and helicopters, specifically at Washington Reagan Airport, which, you know, have all been warning signs for what happened, that crash over the Potomac.
So is that an unusual amount of reports for any individual airport when you talk about these basically aviation issues, near misses? Is this an unusual number of reports for any given major airport?
Yeah, so when we look at, we pulled data from Dulles Airport because that is just nearby and kind of just gives this comparison. And they had 181 self-reported airborne conflicts and near misses in the same time period, and just 5 of those had been between helicopters and airplanes. What I also learned talking to these commercial pilots and former air traffic controllers was that they said it would be a very smart question to ask the administration if they have looked at comparing near misses and airborne incidences at DCA to other airports, because it is probably the busiest airport in the country. And as one pilot writes in their report of a near miss, that this is the most dangerous airport because of all the traffic and because these air traffic controllers at DCA are pushing, trying to get commercial airlines out, trying to get military helicopters around, trying to get VIP movements, etc.
I'm reading in your piece today on the Daily Caller a pilot who posted to this aviation safety reporting system, quote, "This heli conflict," meaning helicopter, "at DCA is an ongoing problem. Here is an accident waiting to happen." This is a pilot posting this in January of 2016 after a near miss between what appears to be, it sounds like a commercial airliner and one of the various government helicopters that fly past Reagan National. There are other posts here. Helicopter traffic was heading up the Potomac while we were on the river. Visual approach did not alert us to the oncoming traffic. After there was action taken to make a correction from a close call, we were then informed by the DCA tower of close traffic. Although at that point it would have been too late, this pilot says, in July of 2015. And there are a lot of these. Here's one that really stood out to me. A pilot angrily writing in 2013 after his aircraft came within 200 feet of a helicopter, quote, "I cannot imagine what business is so pressing that these helicopters are allowed to cross the path of airliners carrying hundreds of people. I do not understand why they are not crossed in between arrivals," the pilot asked. It sounds to be like a very common sense question. Why wouldn't why wouldn't all of that air traffic be scheduled to be more spaced out? So what has the government done? You know, you've got all these pilots and air traffic controllers who have been issuing warnings since the 1980s about these near misses. What do we know, Reagan, about what the government has done in reaction to that?
That's a great question, and that's a question that I had to the FAA as well, and they kind of just spit back at me, some PR type statement, and they answered me rather quickly as well. And I had sent a very long email with a bunch of questions asking, how did you respond to all of these reports? Was there action taken? And when I followed up again to that TomZ PR statement, I received no response about, can you tell me what specific action you've taken? But since that crash, now they've taken drastic action, and they are only allowing certain helicopters to go by the Potomac, including medical helicopters, military helicopters, VIP movement. But when they are moving across the Potomac, all other aircraft must hold and aren't supposed to be in the area. And, that is action that seems like these pilots have been asking for decades, that we found through this report, and now it is only being taken after lives have been lost. And you have to wonder, and I'm sure these pilots in these reports know that the action taken now could have helped prevent something like this.
You know, I'm disappointed, as I'm certain you are too, that you got such a lackluster response from the FAA, just a kind of a terse one-liner to react to all of the reporting that you've done here. You know, it would. I think this is a call to action for the Trump administration to try and get control of the FAA here, because first of all, it's not like the Trump people own this. This is something that's been going on for many decades under a lot of different administrations. You know, clarity on exactly how this happened and how we can prevent it, I think is something that the public desperately wants to know in light of the chaos we've just recently experienced.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so much going on in this White House, and I started to think to myself as I was writing this story, like the plane crash feels like it was forever ago, and as more has continued to happen in the news cycle is so vicious right now, and it's turning so quickly that keeping something like this in the news and at the top of the minds of the Trump White House, I think is very important. And I'm sure that they're trying to think about it as well. But just looking at the news cycle, it is almost like this massive tragedy happened and we kind of moved on pretty quickly. And so I hope that's what our reporting served to do, is kind of re-up this for people and say, hold on, there's a problem, that a very serious one, that this administration needs to add to the top of their to-do list. Yeah, no, it's important that the public gets some answers on this. And to your point, this collision took place on January 29th, not even 2 weeks ago. And you're right, everything has moved at such breakneck speed that it does feel like it was a long time ago. It wasn't. It was very close. Yeah, I honestly felt like it was longer than that. I didn't even realize it was 2 weeks ago, but I guess I'm thinking about writing this piece. It's just, I don't know. I'm curious to see, and this is these pilots that I spoke to and the former air traffic controllers that I spoke to gave me some really good questions that I think are going to be useful for the briefing and useful for the administration, for President Trump. And what's really great about what we're doing right now at the caller is that we're able to ask those questions. If this was the Biden administration or, the Harris administration, I'm not sure if we'd ever be in a position to ask these questions and help expose this problem to the administration. No, that's exactly right. The transparency is great. Actually, moving to that, Reagan, being the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, what has that experience been like inside of this White House? It seems like, maybe I'm wrong, but it does feel like the president takes questions in some form every single day. Are reporters that are at the White House having trouble keeping up with the pace? I tell people that it really feels like I'm in a whole new job and like a whole new position, and that I've almost had like first day jitters over the past couple of weeks trying to relearn the White House beat. And because under President Biden, it was never this quick. We were never this much news. And I think part of that, of course, has to do with the fact that it's a new administration and there's so much to undo and take action on. But even in my conversations talking to White House correspondents before the Trump administration, who had also covered the 2016 administration, they told me that it was completely night and day between the two presidents and the transparency and the amount of questions they take. The nice thing about, or the interesting thing I think about all these questions that President Trump is taking is that not all of them are open to every single member of the press. And so they are sometimes restricted to just the press pool. And so I think that has allowed kind of a rotation of journalists to get in there and ask questions. And with President Biden, there weren't as many options, as many opportunities to ask questions. And a lot of those events were pre-credentialed media, which then gave the White House the opportunity to decide who got to go in and out of those events. And so this rotation, this press pool, system, I think, works because I think you're seeing a variety of questions.
Well, one of the things that was really annoying and corrupt about the Biden era was that there were so many pre-scripted questions. I mean, how many times did we have photographs of the verbatim question printed out on a note card for Joe Biden as he called on some reporter in a staged event? That's not the world that we're watching Trump in. And you can tell because he would, like this week, there was a Huffington Post reporter who asked him a question and he goes, "Where are you from?" He had no idea. And the guy goes, "I'm from HuffPost." And he goes, "I thought they were dead. I didn't even know that still existed." So there's nothing scripted about these exchanges. President Trump is calling on the reporters in the room. And I think you're right to an extent. What's interesting about these more limited access events occasionally is the conversations can be a little bit more productive and less chaotic. But boy, it is cool to see him answering so many questions so frequently. Reagan, what does that mean for the White House press conferences, though? I know that Caroline Leavitt had kind of addressed this early on about her pacing and how frequently she would do these press briefings. Are they basically not having press briefings on days where President Trump answers a lot of questions? Is that how it works?
So I'm still trying to figure out what the rhythm is with that. And I think they are too. Under the Biden administration, we always got weekly guidance, and that typically came on Sunday evenings. And they would tell us, here's what the week is going to look like. You can expect briefings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can expect the president to give remarks on Wednesday. Right now, we are just getting a daily guidance, and sometimes we're not even getting it the night before. Sometimes we are getting it, the morning of 8 a.m. telling us, okay, there's going to be a press briefing today, or the president's going to take questions today.
Right.
Even now, today there was an Oval Office event. He was signing executive orders. It was supposed to be closed press. Last minute, they opened it up to the press. And so it seems to me that the White House is just flying on this day-to-day basis on whatever the president wants to do.
Yep.
And so I think that when he wants one and when they think there's one that's necessary, they're going to be having one. But as far as an absolute rule that we're going to see Caroline Leavitt on the days that Trump doesn't take questions, I'm yet to see that or figure out what that looks like.
It's cool to watch. It must be very cool to be there. Reagan Reese, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. Thank you, as always. Good to talk to you today. All right, keeping our eyes open for remarks from President Trump and Elon Musk, apparently, on a snowy day at the White House. They're expected to speak out in the public soon, so we'll try and carry those as they come. Danny's calling in from Washington, D.C. on line one. Hello, Danny. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Danny boy, you there? Danny was there. Danny's fiddling. He's so close. Danny. No,
yeah,
Danny.
Hey, Vince.
Oh, hey.
I'm here.
Oh, go ahead, Danny. Now's your shot.
Yeah, it sounds a little fuzzy, but I was down on that crash scene on the Potomac when it happened, and I was down there for a while, and I was like, this was bound to happen. And the reason I say that is because the day job that I have, I see it 5 to 6 times a day with helicopters flying from the Pentagon back over the Potomac and flying over West Potomac Park, heading to wherever they're heading. Now, my question is, whether they're going to JBAB or going to Andrews or whatever the case may be, why don't they drive? Why are they that important that they got to take an aircraft up and over the Potomac?
Right.
I mean, here's the deal. Nobody's going to know who they are if they're in a car.
That's right.
And where I went to grade school up on MacArthur Boulevard during the Vietnam War, we saw Hueys up and down the river all day long when they were still flying prop jet planes with Eastern Airlines.
Yeah, no, these are all excellent points, Danny. I'm sorry.
Incursion.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to you right at the top as you were fiddling with the phone. But I will say that you're right about that. Most of these guys, they don't need motorcades. Just put them in a regular car and move them like the rest of us. All right, coming up, Congressman Andy Ogles joins us in the next hour. More of your calls ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.